Hi, everyone. Welcome to Rutgers at the Voice of College Football. I'm here with my fantastic co-host, Gabe Pickup. We have a great show planned for you tonight. We're going to talk about some breaking news in the running back room for Rutgers football. Then we're going to talk about who are the impact players for 2025 and beyond. We've got a great show for you. We've got the link in the chat if you want to call in, and we welcome your comments. And if you like this show, please hit that like and subscribe button. Gabe, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. We did create a sponsorships email for anybody looking to promote their brands. It should be in the chat, sponsorships at Voice of College Football, but the acronym vocfb.com. So if you're looking to promote your business, just head on over, email that email, and we'll hook you right up. And I'm doing great. I can't wait for this fantastic show.
Absolutely. Well, Gabe, let's get right into it. I'm hearing that there's some breaking news in the running back room, particularly with regard to the depth chart. What do you got for us?
Yeah, so it's interesting because last week we actually were talking about Antoine Raymond being RB1, but according to sources here, it's CJ Campbell that is running back 1, which brings an interesting dynamic because he's more of a hybrid style running back where Raymond is more of a power back. And typically 1st and 10, 2nd and 1, you see the power backs with the ball, but we're going to be seeing a lot more hybrid style play, which I guess fits what the offense is trying to do with this Miami Dolphins-esque offense that we're running with, Ethan being the Tua of especially the early years, and then Campbell being sort of an Achane kind of guy. And I'm excited. It brings a different dynamic, specifically with Monangai. He was obviously a hybrid, but more of a power back than a receiving back. So this is at least a change. And, with losing Monangai, that stinks for any offense. But I can't say I agree or disagree with the choice. Time will tell. Maybe Raymond will work his way up to RB1, but for now it's Campbell.
Yeah, so I have to say I'm a bit surprised about this. I suspected that Raymond was going to take over the reins from Monangai. He had a great year, averaged over 4 yards per carry. I didn't really I don't even know who CJ Campbell is. Can you give us some background on him and why you think he's elevated to number 1 on the depth chart?
Well, he's just a transfer back, and the only reason that he is number 1 would be because of his plug-in style of play. He's Mr. Reliable, and he kind of does whatever you need him to do. He can catch the ball. Obviously, Raymond can too, but you don't look for him to. But with Campbell, if you're down 28 or you're up 28, you can look for him to run the ball. Obviously, Raymond will see action 1st and goal at the goal line. He'll see action 4th and 1. But for the most part, it's really going to be Campbell who Ethan is, giving the ball to when he's not deciding to be a quarterback or a running back himself.
Absolutely. And it looks like we have a pretty deep running back room, which is going to bring balance to the offense. Now, my question, though, is going to come down to the trenches. Do we have the offensive line that's going to be able to both protect Cali Kamanis and open up those holes for Campbell and Raymond so that we can be a balanced offense that wins in the trenches, wins that time of possession, and really grinds out victories?
Yeah, so I really think we do have the offensive line, and it comes down to coaching. Shiano's a fantastic coach, but you look even deeper. Offensive lines coach Pat Flaherty has coached nothing but consistent teams, and Rutgers has never had any holes with its offensive line of late, excluding injury, of course, but that happens to every team. When you look at the depth chart, the starting 5 that are on the line, they're solid. And it's something I'm really looking forward to because we saw Ethan have lots of time to make smart plays and lots of time to get in his own head and mess up. But you can thank the offensive line for giving him that chance to even come to conclusions instead of just getting sacked a bunch or having to throw the ball away. So hopefully that can translate to the running game because you need those guys not just to preserve the scrimmage line, but be able to push forward several yards to get those openings for CJ to operate. Although with CJ, he's definitely going to be running left and right a little more than Antoine Raymond.
Absolutely. Well, it looks like the early indications are that Rutgers offense is going to be an offense to be reckoned with this year. and they're going to have balance in the running back room and depth. And I think we're going to have a quarterback in Callie Kamanis who has grown from last year, and with that offensive line, we could be dangerous both in the run and pass. And that also brings me to the next part of this show, which is we've got some great transfers, but more importantly, some great young players coming in that are going to make an early impact in 2025 and beyond. Do you want to talk about who those players are and how they're going to take the Scarlet Knights to new heights this year in the Big Ten?
Yeah, absolutely. So Raymond, he gets another year to develop as sort of a 1B option. We've already touched on him a lot. We have KJ Duff, sophomore. He's listed as wide receiver 1. He's going to be out wide with DT Sheffield as the slot receiver, although he's going to be a senior. But we have 4 wide receivers that are sophomores that we're going to have for next year and the year after. KJ Duff, as I just mentioned, Fama Toure, sophomore, Ben Black, sophomore, Ben Rosenblatt, sophomore. These guys are all considered wide receivers as opposed to slot receivers. So it'll be an interesting dynamic in the depth chart, and maybe look for 1 or 2 to transfer out, or if a few more do, we can get a star wide receiver to transfer in. Tight ends, Logan Blake, sophomore. We have 2 other tight ends, so he's 3rd on the list, but he's there to progress and probably start 2026. When it comes to the offensive line, Raymond Giacob, I believe I'm pronouncing that right, freshman, and he's the thing is with the offensive line, all the underclassmen are actually second, which is it's rare to even have a deep depth chart for the offensive line, but we do have that blessing, thankfully, this next year with Raymond Giacob, freshman, Nick Oliveira at right guard, sophomore, Dominic Rivera, right tackle, sophomore. And these guys they're probably not going to start next year, but you can look for them to see some action the year after. Or if there's injury, cross your fingers, they will play this year because they're next in line and only other guys in line.
Yeah.
And then when you go to defensive end, you'll have to forgive my pronunciation on this one. Abdul Jibril Rahman, sophomore. He's actually projected to start at a defensive end, I believe at left defensive end. Transferred Daryl Denegohi. He is from James Madison University. He is projected to start. He's a sophomore. And outside linebackers, we have Abram Wright, sophomore, Sam Robinson, freshman, Kevin Levy, freshman. So we have a lot of young transfers and young new commits that could have an exciting 2025 and beyond.
Yeah, I think you raised some great points, and we certainly do have some great players coming in. But I want to emphasize, especially on the defensive side of the ball, where we lost a lot of talent, and Coach Shiano has done a fantastic job of bringing in both experience and youth, particularly on the defensive line, that is going to make this Rutgers defense formidable. For example, on the defensive side, we have Michael Clayton from Warner Robins, Georgia, 6 foot, 180 pounds, a very highly rated cornerback with great speed, who is going to compete for a role in the secondary. We have Kamar Archie, 6'1", 220 from the Hun School in Princeton, New Jersey. Great football program. Versatile linebacker with excellent athleticism, and he can read plays and make tackles in the open field. Then we've got from Jersey City, New Jersey, another linebacker, DJ McClary, 6'1", 185. Excellent tackler who can contribute in various defensive schemes, which is so critically important. Then we've got another defensive back, Rennick Stretch Darilis, a 4-star defensive back, 5'11", 160. And then we've got Taliba Koba from Hillside, New Jersey, first team all-conference as a junior, 4-star signee and number 8 overall prospect from New Jersey as ranked by 247. He is an athlete, so it looks like he's going to be able to play or has the capacity to play multiple positions. And what's really exciting about this 2025 class, ranked 33rd in the country and ahead of teams, including those like Arizona State that made the playoff last year. They've got 3 4-stars coming in, 24 3-stars, and 3 top 100 ESPN commits. So we've certainly got a foundation being built by Coach Shiano that looks to the future being one that is very bright.
And one last guy that I did forget to mention, just because I didn't actually cover the secondary there, but Kaj Sanders, sophomore, he is our starting strong safety next year. So he'll be there next year. He'll be there in 2026. He is going to be the last in command anytime a running back escapes the linebackers on the right-hand side or a deep ball gets past Bo Masco, rather. Kaj Sanders is going to be there for the hard hits, for the interceptions, for the forced fumbles. It's going to be a learning curve for him, but he has time to do it, and he is special.
I completely agree with you. And this segment would not be complete without mentioning Cam Miller from the Nittany Lions of Penn State. Coming in from Penn State, 6 foot 183, 4 starts at Penn State, 27 tackles, 5 pass breakups in 16 games. And then we have Jet Elad from UNLV coming in, 6'1", 205, 84 tackles, 5 for loss last year with 1 sack, an interception, and 6 pass breakups. Not to mention South Florida. We're getting Doug Blue Eli, 6'2", 315, 37 tackles last year, 5 for loss. Gonna really beef up that defensive line because let me tell you something. Rutgers needs big people on that defensive line to plug those gaps, and we need linebackers with speed. With the combination of linebackers, defensive backs, and defensive linemen that they're bringing in both from high school and the transfer portal, the losses are significant, but the gains are incredibly impressive. And
I'm surprised you said the B word that wasn't beef. I thought you were going to say that we need beef.
We need beef. I'll tell you, we need beef because every time I think about this, it reminds me of when I was a kid watching those commercials for White Castle when Ann Ramsey would look at the burger and say, "Where's the beef?" Well, Rutgers should run a commercial this year, clipping part of that commercial where she says, "Where's the beef?" And then they should say, "Here it is," and put those players on the screen and say, Rutgers 2025, a year to remember. But we've discussed 2025 at length, the players, the schedule, and the predictions. And we've differed somewhat. I think you were looking at maybe a 9-3 or 8-4 season. I was close to 7-5, 6-6. Am I right about that?
I was, I guess, 8.5 and 3.5, but I let you decide the 9-3 for me. I let you go ahead and say that we're beating Penn State. I never directly said that.
Yes, I think I was the one who predicted that Penn State would be defeated by Rutgers, and I think I predicted that the Oregon Ducks would lose in Piscataway.
Yeah.
So,
hey, I mean, anything's possible. Maybe Cam Miller decides to have the best revenge game we've ever seen.
Absolutely. And I think, I think Rutgers will surprise a lot of people this year. They will be very competitive. I think what was a little bit disappointing this past year, as we've discussed, has been those injuries and what could have been a much better year. But you've heard me say it on this show before, and I'm going to say it again. I think 2026 is the magical year for 3 reasons. First, these impact players that we just talked about, they're going to have, this is going to be their first year for many of them, and they're going to do well, but they need that in-game experience. They need to be tested under pressure. When they come back for that 2026 season, they're going to have the experience, the intangibles, and the drive to take Rutgers to the next level. I also think that, as we'll discuss, the schedule for Rutgers in 2026 is very, very favorable. And with the experience and the schedule, that's going to be something to watch. And number 3, Coach Shiano. He's not going to be around here forever. And we love Coach Shiano and everything he's done for Rutgers in both of his stints here and what he does for the students, both as athletes, and as individuals. He helps to make them better people. Now, I think Coach Shiano, 2026, I think he's looking ahead to 26 too, in part, because he knows that's going to be the year that reminds us of 2006 in his first stint. So
let me ask you this before we
Yeah.
get right into it. Do you
Sure.
know anything about our backup quarterbacks? There's a Johnny Shepard who is sophomore, and there's AJ Surace, who is a freshman. Unless someone else comes in and gets transferred, which is very possible, this next year is going to be Callie McManus' last year with us, and then he's either going to declare or he's going to decide his future is in coaching, commentary. Maybe he decides that McDonald's is the way, unless you want to prove us wrong, Ethan. But with that being said, if you know anything about these quarterbacks, are you able to give the people any insight on who might be getting the starting nod over the other?
Not at this point, because right now, Ethan is firmly entrenched as the Rutgers quarterback. And as we focused on 2025, I think it's a bit premature to predict in 2026 who will be the starting quarterback. What I do know is that they are capable quarterbacks, and it will be a true QB competition. And as far as Ethan goes, Ethan, all the questions that Gabe just asked could be answered if you come on the show. So we want to formally invite you to come on Rutgers at the Voice of College Football, have a conversation with us. Let's talk about your future, your accomplishments, and what to expect in 2025. Now, as we go ahead to 2026, first, as I said, the players. They're going to gain experience this year. And this is not to say that 2025 is going to be a throwaway year. It certainly will not. Rutgers will be competitive, and they could do some special things. But as these players gain experience, as they develop a team-oriented mindset and develop cohesion both on the defensive and offensive side of the ball, this young talent in 2026 can do something special. And, Gabe, I say that in part because, like I said, the schedule is favorable, but I think, Coach Shiano's not going to be around here forever. I think he wants to have that banner year, that year that everyone looks back on and says that was the year that Rutgers finally broke through and became a national title contender. And I think he's set up to do so in 2026. Why do I say that? Well, let's talk about this schedule, and let's get your thoughts on some of the games.
Yeah.
Before I do that, I noticed that Sports Talk with Austin said, let me guess, Drew Aller makes a game-losing interception. Austin, you are 100% right. I am predicting in the loss to Penn State, in the loss to Rutgers, Drew Aller will be driving Penn State deep down into Rutgers territory in Piscataway with nervous fans thinking, oh, this is going to be yet another loss. But Drew Aller will make an ill-advised interception on 3rd and 3 from the 21-yard line to seal the deal for Rutgers in a 24-20 victory. So let's talk about that 2006 schedule, Gabe. Rutgers, home against UMass. I thought UMass was a basketball program.
They're barely that. They don't do much in March Madness. They're a fringe March Madness team year in, year out. I don't know anything about their football program, and I hope that I don't have to learn the hard way. I'm predicting that's an easy win.
And what a game that's going to be when the head coach of UMass will be none other than the former defensive coordinator for Rutgers who left this year. Joe Harismiak. That's going to be an interesting story. Now,
absolutely.
After UMass, this game always concerns me. They're going to go up to Chestnut Hill, Boston College, to face the Eagles and Bill O'Brien. Now, Boston College, one of those teams that can compete with anybody, pull some upsets, but also doesn't have the talent of an Alabama or a Texas, but always a dangerous team. What do you think about that game against Boston College?
Well, I don't think Bill O'Brien's a name that you hear going crazy with recruits. He's a very good coordinator, and that's pretty much all I can do with compliments for him. I mean, he's got an offensive mind, but with this new defense, and we're going to have a lot of familiar faces in 2026 too, I can see us Legion of booming them and having them maybe get shut out in the first half, put in their second stringers. I'm saying that's 2 blowouts right now, Adam.
Yep. And I'm going to make a prediction in 2026 that young but now experienced secondary is going to get a lot of turnovers and they're going to get 3 of them at Boston College, and they're going to win the game 30-17. Third game is against. That's right, because Rutgers, 2026 is their year. Now, the next game is home against Howard University. Howard University, always known as a very, very respected academic institution. But like UMass, do they have a football program?
Well, the thing is, HBCU schools athletically are on the up. You know that. I know that. Look at what Deion Sanders brought to HBCUs. Deshaun Jackson now coaches Delaware State.
Absolutely.
So look for more HBCUs to get stacked with talent. That's definitely going to be a close game. We can't predict the roster at all because top to bottom, they're going to be talented. It's going to be close. But if this is our year, like you're saying it is, I'll give us the 3-0 on that one because we don't even know what the team looks like. But if we don't know what they look like, there's not going to be that culture, that chemistry that they need to beat us.
Yeah, I think that could be a trap game. Like you said, the HSBCUs are impressive. They have become very competitive, and they are teams to be reckoned with. I think it's going to be closer than the experts think.
But I think it'll be closer. That'll be closer than week 1 or 2.
I agree with you, and I think it'll be competitive into the fourth quarter. I think Rutgers pulls out a 10-point victory. The next game, another game that always bothers me against this team, because this team is capable of anything, capable of upsetting the best teams but losing to the worst teams. That's the Terrapins of Maryland, at Maryland. What are your thoughts on that?
You'll have to remind. Did we face them last year? I don't think we did, right?
We defeated them 31-17 on the road at the end of the year.
Okay. I guess that was one of those games that blended in just because of those few losses that stood out. And
that's exactly right.
Yeah, it was just in between some heartbreaks, so it must have got pushed to the side. But, I mean, look, Maryland's a great school. If it's a year that we're supposed to contend for the playoffs, Maryland is not going to be near the playoffs. I mean, that's all I can say based on, history repeating itself. But
sure.
So, I mean, again, it's a trap game. They play tough. We should, in theory, beat them. I can't give any score on it. It will probably be close, within 2 possessions at least. So I'm thinking around that, maybe that 31-17 mark you said for week 1.
I was just going to say, I'm going to predict the identical score, 31-17, as Mike Loxley will begin contemplating whether Maryland is the place where he wants to remain, because Maryland just never seems to get over the hump. Enough talent to challenge you and even beat you like they did with USC this year, but I don't think it's going to happen for them against the Scarlet Knights in 2026. Yeah. Next game is on the road again against another academic school in that windy city called Chicago, Illinois, against those pesky Northwestern Wildcats. I'm predicting a blowout here. What do you think?
Yeah, how's the chemistry over there? Are they all back to normal now?
Oh, good. That's a good question. I'm not sure.
I know their athletic program was really in the gutter after the whole hazing scandal came out in 2023.
I don't know if the chemistry is back. I think that hazing incident was terrible. I also think that they just don't have the players, and no. I don't think football is a huge priority at that elite academic school. I think Northwestern puts up a fight for a half. Rutgers runs away with it in the second half.
I think so too. I think we'll wake up. Shiana will light a fire under their asses, and we'll wake up.
Absolutely, I agree with you. Now, the next game I am going to predict will be our first loss of the season, and the reason in 2026 it will be our first loss of the season is because in Happy Valley, Penn State will not have Drew Aller. They will have another quarterback, and that other quarterback will not turn the ball over. Rutgers will struggle against a very stiff Nittany Lion defense. I think Penn State comes away with the win 28-10.
Don't forget, though, Drew Aller really elevated this Nittany Lions program. Before him, you weren't talking about them in any playoff hunt. and he really elevated that program specifically with his arm offensively. Just because he has some mental mistakes doesn't necessarily mean that it's an addition by subtraction when he declares. I mean, you're losing a big quarterback there when he goes. Now, they should, in theory, have a good development program for his backups, and they should have fine seasons. But off the bat, you can't expect Drew Aller performances. So I think it'll be close, but I didn't say we would beat them this year. I didn't say we'd lose to them, but I'll say 20. I will agree that we probably do lose to them in 2026.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I'm going to have to disagree on Drew Aller for one simple reason. It's a college football playoff. There's 38 seconds left. The game is tied. You have the ball. You have a chance to drive down for a field goal. Worst case scenario, the game will remain tied. You'll go into overtime with that outstanding Penn State defense. And Notre Dame's going to struggle to score. So they go into overtime, and during overtime, oh, wait a second, I'm sorry, it never got to overtime because Drew Aller throws an interception that is utterly inexcusable into the middle of the field, setting up the Notre Dame victory.
Sure.
I wish the best for Drew Aller. I hope he goes to the NFL and is a star. But what I saw from that was an issue with the intangibles, with the mindset, with the ability to process quickly, get that ball out of bounds. To make a mistake that bad is a red flag for me. So I think maybe you're right. Drew Aller does elevate Penn State, but it kind of reminds me of a tutor that you have that only elevates you to a B+. We need a quarterback who's going to bring them over the hump.
You don't think Penn State making the playoffs this year was an A on its own, considering they haven't been playoff worthy in who knows how long? I know the format's different, so there's more wiggle room. But even if other years were 12 teams, they were still nowhere near the top 12.
I would agree with you on that. And then, I'm going to say that the next game at home is a win because I'm going to say that this team is a one-hit wonder, and that's the Hoosiers from Indiana. Signetti does not get the confetti in Piscataway, and I think Rutgers wins by 10 points. What are your thoughts?
I agree with you. I do think we beat them, but my only issue here is we're predicting at this point, 6-1, 7-1?
We are.
And it's easy to say on paper we're better. We think we can beat them. But if you're looking back, the amount of factors that play into winning week in and week out, then you'd have to make that of 5 weeks in a row, 6 weeks in a row. It's tough to say that we'll play the perfect football we need to start off this hot. But on a weekly basis, I do think we beat Indiana.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it's going to be interesting, our discussion right now, because we've got 5 games to go. After we discuss those 5 games, you've got to call Austin Williams. Always good to see him. We're going to bring him on for his great comments. But the next game is home, and it's going to be against a quarterback that everyone's saying is the future at Michigan and one of the best prospects in a while, Bryce Underwood. And the Wolverines come into Piscataway. I think we've got loss number 2, Michigan, in a closer than expected victory, 20-13. What are your thoughts?
I think that we beat Michigan as long as they're at this level of football and not anywhere near 2023 with Harbaugh. I like their head coach now. I believe he was offensive coordinator before that, Sharon Moore. But I don't know if the players buy into him the same way they did Harbaugh, given the fact that Moore doesn't have any NFL experience. He doesn't have any experience converting these guys into professionals like they hope to be.
Sure.
So, sure, they'll play hard, but will they have the roster? I don't think so. I'm going to go ahead and say we win by a score. But
all right, you heard it here first. A shocking prediction.
Absolutely. But with that being said, obviously with Michigan, anything can happen. They're a historically elite level program. But
Well,
I don't know. I don't see them
I
having that.
predicted that we'd beat Oregon next year and Penn State, so you are
Yeah.
certainly more than entitled to make a shock upset prediction.
I
Bryce
mean,
Underwood in his second year will fall
second year.
flat
That's the thing.
against the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. You heard it here first. Let's hope that's true.
Second
Now,
year, a lot to learn.
yeah, the next week, of course, in my opinion, the game is in Piscataway against what I consider to be a very silly team. A team that is always failing to meet expectations and rarely even knocking on the door. That is the Spartans, Michigan
Michigan
State.
State.
I think Rutgers pulls out a 33-20 victory in Piscataway. What are your thoughts?
My prediction isn't much different. They are silly, as you say. They're more of a basketball school now, anyways.
Yes.
Yeah, I want to give them some respect, but I don't know what to even compliment on, especially in 2 years' time. They're definitely on the wrong trajectory. They're not a team that you would invest in if you saw them on a stock. I wouldn't put it past them that it's a blowout.
Yes. Perhaps they will have a ceremony in Piscataway honoring Tom Izzo for his accomplishments with the
Hmm.
basketball team. But the football team, in my view, will not succeed. And then we have
No.
another home game against our good friend Dylan Raiola, apparently the heir apparent at Nebraska, who was the next Patrick Mahomes, but didn't quite pan out for Dylan and the Cornhuskers this year. I think this is going to be a brawl in the trenches, go down late into the fourth quarter, with Rutgers pulling out a 13-10 victory. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, let me say this about Dylan Raiola. I made a top 10 Big Ten quarterbacks ranking for the Voice of College Football X account. It unfortunately got taken down because autocorrect made Jaden Hayden, and that doesn't look very good. But while it was up, a lot of people were bashing my ranking of Dylan Raiola on the ranking. I had him as the seventh best Big Ten quarterback, actually behind Callie McManus. What has Dylan Raiola done to deserve anything higher than that? He's got potential. No one's taking that away from him. But just because he has Mahomes' phone number doesn't make him Patrick freaking Mahomes. Um, and people need to chill out on this generational talk with him and thinking that he is what Bryce Underwood should be. He's nowhere near that. Now, I don't have anything against him personally. It's really just his fans that were getting under my skin, rightfully so, I think, because all of my peers were saying that the list was spot on. Now, they started off last year very similar to us. They got off hot. They started off hot. Then they kind of plundered a little bit. And then they cooked up a little something, and then they fell short of anyone taking them seriously. Next year, I look for it to be the same. And the year after, if he's still at Nebraska and he doesn't transfer somewhere else or declare after next year, I think that it'll be a similar result. We're going to beat Nebraska, and we're going to do so. I'll say 26-17.
Okay, fair prediction. Then we have another home game against the University of Southern California Trojans. And what really bothered me about our 42-20 loss this year, it wasn't the point differential as much as it was the differential in physicality. USC was just so superior in the trenches and far more physical that I think it overwhelmed Rutgers in the end. That was the game when Monangai was injured. The question is going to be in 2 years, will we have the physicality, the size, and the speed to compete with the Trojans in Piscataway? I think the answer to that is yes, and I think Rutgers comes out with a 28-27 victory in a thriller.
Yeah, I know it's kind of contradictory of me to say this considering I just predicted we beat Michigan, but USC, no chance. USC later, go back to Piscataway. I mean, the thing is with USC, even when they have an off year, they're still going to get a lot of commits because of the location. It's smack in the middle of Los Angeles. It's the West Coast. It's when it comes to football, it might be the school when it comes to the West Coast. Obviously, with other sports, there's like for basketball, UCLA, etc. But you can't just count them out. And no matter how good of a year we have, they're the school in the West Coast everyone wants to go to. They're the school with elite quarterback play. And when they don't have elite quarterback play, they get commits that are elite quarterbacks and they transform them. Their staff is incredible. Their offense is always top tier. I mean, this might be the humbling game. We've had a 5-game winning streak. We've had a 4-game winning streak in this 2026 year. But this is the game that kind of humbles us and reshapes us into how can we become better and stop coasting. We're going to lose this game, and we're going to lose by 10, 14 points.
Okay, that's a fair prediction, and I don't have much confidence in mine. I do think if Rutgers is more physical, they can compete with the USC team that at that point will have lost a lot of players from their current roster. But like you said, they always have a great staff. They always recruit great talent. So we'll see. But let's assume that you're right and I'm wrong, and Rutgers goes in 9-2, last game of the year, and they fly to Camp Randall in beautiful Madison, Wisconsin, to face those very resilient Badgers who are particularly tough to play in Camp Randall. I think this is the game where it comes down to the fourth quarter, but Rutgers, unfortunately, does not pull it out to end the season 9-3 and loses the game 26-20. Your thoughts?
See, we played absolutely terrible against them this past year. So, take this with a grain of salt. But there's no reason for us to even have a close game against them. We should really beat them. We were supposed to beat them this past year. It was mental games. And hopefully with Shiano and with these upcoming sophomores that are going to be seniors in 2026, that this game will be one that solidifies us for the playoff hunt. And maybe if we beat them and we go 10-2, like Adam and I predict, just in different circumstances, then maybe we do get into the playoffs. Maybe that is our year. And then with all the losses the following year, we can get some more commits that will solidify the dominance of future Rutgers Scarlet Knights football.
Absolutely. And if we do get into the playoffs, watch out, because Rutgers is going to play like they have nothing to lose.
Yep.
They're going to play loose, and you could see something special happen in those playoffs. So great discussion about the 2026 season. We look forward to see how things develop in 25 and 26 to see can Rutgers break through and become a contender in the Big Ten. Now,
the best part about this is we can stand on this for as long as possible, because that is 2 years away, and we can look like a-holes and talk about how this is nothing but a fact when we're predicting it.
Absolutely. It's going to be an interesting time. Well, we've got one of our good friends here, Austin Williams, calling into the show to give his insightful comments. Austin, thanks so much for joining the show. I'd love to hear from you. What's on your mind?
Denver Nuggets.
Yeah, happy Monday, gentlemen. And I mean this from the bottom of my heart, my favorite part of Monday. I love this show.
Woo. Thank you very much. We love having you on.
But, this is kind of interesting because we're kind of looking to the future. It's always good to look towards your future, kind of plan. And it's kind of interesting, because I want to talk about the receiver room to start off with. And it's kind of interesting how they're all young. They're all kind of freshmen. They're all going to kind of get a chance to go through this program. I just think, with Ethan Kaliakmanis, he's going to be there. This is probably his last year. And then these freshman receivers will be sophomores next year. And then they'll have to learn a whole new quarterback and a whole new, get that connection going. Because what I see this year is, the thing that worries me about this is with Rutgers bringing in all this new wide receiver talent, how will they be able to use it going forward when they make a quarterback change and get on pace and on time with their new quarterback?
Yeah, sure. That's a fair criticism. I will say that if we rewind a little bit and just look at this year, there is one guy that stands out to me, and I was giving him his praise last week, DT Sheffield. He really reminds me of Deebo Samuel a few years ago before the weight gain and the attitude issues. he can play that brand of I almost said basketball. I'm so used to talking basketball on my Instagram. He can play that brand of football. He can run the ball. He is the slot receiver, but he can also go out wide. And he's going to teach these young guys what it's like to not just play wide receiver, but be a team player, to adjust on the fly, and to show what it means to be a new Scarlet Knight. And once these guys see how dominant DT is going to be, because I expect nothing but the best from him, then guys like KJ Duff, who is listed as wide receiver 1, Famatore, who is also listed as a wide receiver on the wide instead of the slot, they're going to be the guys for the future. And we got Ben Rosenblatt also to sort of be there for insurance. And they're going to learn from DT, and I think they're going to elevate the next year no matter who the quarterback is.
Yeah. And I think one thing that's critical for me in 2025 and going through 2026, obviously Cali Kamath won't be there in 26. What matters to me is continuity with the scheme. And I think that they have to maintain that continuity so that they're replacing a player but not changing the scheme. And I think if they can do that, they have a chance to be successful.
And one of the reasons why I bring it up, and it worries me when I see these teams, that they change quarterbacks year after year, and then fan bases like to question, why are we struggling? Why are we this? Why are we that? Well, the continuity isn't always like that. And that's what worries me, because they'll have 1 year with Ethan, and the next year they'll have a completely new quarterback. And like you said, Gabe, they're going to get a chance, with DT Sheffield, hopefully, to bring these new guys along and teach them, hey, I've been through this, like, be the leader, be the voice. But I do expect Rutgers to struggle in 2026 with the offense first couple games, because it's hard to get the timing with a new quarterback right off the bat. Perfect example, Tom Brady with Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Everyone with Godwin and Evans thought this is a match made in heaven. Those first couple games through that 2020 season, they struggled. Not a lot of people remember that because of what it ended in. Obviously, the ultimate goal. And that's why I kind of bring that up to you guys. Does that concern you?
So one thing I'll say is the other batch of quarterbacks that we have behind Ethan right now, Johnny Shepard's a sophomore. AJ Suris is a freshman. Now, but both of these guys are going to be upperclassmen in 2026. Unless we go with a transfer route right after Ethan, then I can see that issue being a factor. But both of these guys will have experience learning as QB2, QB1 if Ethan were to get injured for a game or miss a game for whatever reason. So the culture will be there even if they're not on the field.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, because here's the thing. If they get a transfer quarterback in for 2026, Austin, I think you're 100% right. They're going to have problems with continuity and with adapting to that quarterback. The quarterbacks they have on the roster now, that'll be their third year in the system. And I'm fairly certain that during practice, they will have caught passes from those quarterbacks and at least develop some understanding and expectation of how that quarterback plays and how they, interact with the offensive scheme. So he, I think, is one of those backups is going to have to step up in 2026, and that will be important. So you make a great point.
And the reason why, too, I think it's important, like transfers is always hard, to get right, because especially like learning a new system and stuff. But if you've been a quarterback that's been in this system, like you guys are mentioning, that changes the game as well, because they've already got the system down. Now, do some quarterbacks have that special connection with their one receiver or their one tight end, like a safety blanket? Yes. A lot of quarterbacks do have that. Brady had Gronk. Mahomes has got Kelsey. And I feel like Ethan, he kind of has developed chemistry with his guys. The quarterback that's going to take his spot next is going to have to develop that chemistry with the next guy. Okay, is it going to be Duff? Who's going to be my security blanket when all heck breaks loose? Who am I going to throw this to? That's That's one thing I'm going to look out for.
Yeah. And there's also kind of an intangible that really is important, and that's the personal relationship between the quarterback who will replace Cali Kamanis and those receivers. They need to have chemistry. They need to like each other. They need to know each other because a lot of these games come down to 4 or 5 plays, and we need Rutgers to finally be winning those plays to get over the hump.
Absolutely.
And timing is everything because
Yeah.
all it takes is one slight second. And the DBs and corners and safeties are so good now. All it takes is a split second and they read that route just right and it's intercepted going back the other way. So you got to have your timing on point too.
Yeah, you're 100% right. And one of the things I'm going to be looking for from the backups is, can they throw receivers open instead of waiting for windows to open? If they can do that, something special could happen. But right now, you're right. You make some good points, and we're not sure.
Nope. And it's funny because you would have expected Ethan's chemistry this previous year to be with a wide receiver. It was mostly with Manungai. So it's going to be an adjustment either way, whether it's for Ethan this year or whoever plays next year.
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing too. Like you mentioned, Adam, that's a fantastic point. A lot of great quarterbacks throw it before the receiver even breaks out of his route. Like, I'll watch the film and the tape of a lot of the quarterbacks, not just in the NFL, but in college. A receiver will be not even halfway out of his break yet, and that ball's already out of the quarterback's hand, and it gets there. And I'm thinking, how do some of these quarterbacks do that? And it goes back to what I was saying about chemistry, timing, and knowing one another. You're just trusting the guy. Okay, you're going to run this post. As soon as I see your foot do this, if I've got time, I'm going to let it go then. I'm going to trust you're going to be there for me.
You got to trust them to remember the audibles, too. I mean, it's a mind game.
That's exactly right. And I think it comes down to the quarterback and the receivers have to have such chemistry that they know each move they're going to make. They know exactly what they're going to do, and that enables the quarterback to say, I can throw it to a spot. I know he's going to be there. And that's going to depend on, number one, is there chemistry between the quarterback and the receivers? Number two, honestly, do they like each other? Do they get along? Because, when you have a team-oriented mindset and people get along as a team, they want to play for each other. They want to, and they have that hunger to be successful. So it's going to see if those intangibles can develop for 2026. And if they do, Rutgers could be dangerous.
Mm-hmm. And another... Mm-hmm. Not to cut you off, Gabe. Go ahead. My bad.
I was just saying this is Adam's year. This is his big year.
But another thing I want to bring up with you all, and I don't know how much y'all have touched on it, but the offensive line for Rutgers. I played offensive line in high school, so this is one of my favorite things to talk about. How is that looking going forward? Not just past this year, but going forward. What's that looking like? Because that's a key part of the game. As we've mentioned.
So right now we only have 3 offensive line that are on the roster that are underclassmen, and none of the 3 are starting. So it's rough. We're going to need some transfers. But currently constructed, it's solid. It'll be solid for this next year.
Mm-hmm. When it comes to the offensive line, there's 2 things I'm looking for. Number one, I want to see some speed on that offensive line. All right, some mobility. And I want to see that the unit is cohesive and they work well together. It is an area of concern for me in 2025 and 26 because if the offensive line doesn't work, the offense doesn't work.
Let me just say this. Sorry, Austin. I just wanted to say Pat Flaherty is one of the best offensive line coaches in the nation, in my opinion. And the thing is, we're going to have a solid year this year, and he's going to get offers for a promotion, whether it's in this program or another program. We better keep him one way or another. If he gets promoted to offensive coordinator, so be it, because he's that freaking good of a coordinator.
And that's a great point, Gabe, and a great point, Adam. And what I want to say is this. The offensive line doesn't get a lot of respect. And what I mean by that is when the game is over, what do we talk about the most? The quarterback, what a great drive. But it all starts up front on that O-line because they set up a lot of what your offense is going to be. And if you don't have an offensive line, as we've seen in history, you will get eaten alive. And I feel like with Rutgers, like you said, Gabe, trying to run a Miami Dolphins type offense, what do the Dolphins do great? Play action. If you don't have an O-line to play action, Ethan Kaliakmanis is going to be in the backfield, and in 2 seconds, there's going to be 3 guys in his face, and he's just going to have to chuck it in the air and hope for the best. And we all don't want to see that because then Adam will be having a heart attack.
Yeah, that's right. I'll be in the hospital on blood thinners because he threw his 3rd interception, and I don't need that stuff. So here's the thing: the protection is important, but it's particularly important that the players on the offensive line not just have chemistry, but that they have intelligence. Because with the way that defenses blitz and scheme these days, it's very difficult. So they're going to have to be a tight, intelligent unit. And I will say for 2026, Gabe, I'm hoping we have a quarterback that's dual threat because that can make up for some deficiencies. And I'm hoping that one of those backups can run, because what happened with Ethan this year is he often didn't have 3 seconds to throw. And what he would do is sometimes he'd run for a first down. He did have some mobility, but what happened far too often was ill-advised throws under pressure. And we've got to minimize that to have a chance to win those 4 or 5 plays against good teams.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a very fair point. When it comes to this next year, Adam, I have to say I agree. We need these linemen to be fast, quick on their feet, especially when it comes to this Wildcat-style offense when we're running a lot of halfback draws, but you see wide receivers running right before they hand it off. You need, when we do hand it off to DT or whoever, you need these linemen to be able to run out left, out right, or almost getting involved offensively, like they're chess pieces.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the things too. And in the Big Ten, it's especially important to have an O-line, because in the Big Ten, you play some of the best defensive fronts in the country. And if you don't have an O-line, you are absolutely going to get walked up and down the field. And
we're worried about Abdul Carter this year, thankfully.
Like he is a stud. And in Michigan with Mason Graham and them, that would have been a problem for Rutgers.
Oh, yeah. Of course, yeah.
Yeah, well, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Adam. I didn't mean to cut you off. Go for it. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say you are 100% right. That's a great point about defensive lines in the Big Ten, because what did we see Ohio State do to Oregon and Notre Dame? They had no answer for their defensive pressure. So our offensive line is going to have to be elite if we're going to compete.
Mm-hmm. And that's 100% correct, Adam.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was gonna say that sounds like a good Plato Socrates type of quote there.
But this is also going to correlate into Adam's next point. This is where also another thing Rutgers going forward needs to also take notes of from Ohio State and Michigan is get the beef. As Adam likes to say, we need the beef. And that's what Rutgers does, because at times, even though they weren't healthy all the time last year, they really struggled to stop the run. And that's another thing within the Big Ten. There's a lot of teams that like to run the football and do it well. That's what Michigan won the whole thing off 2 years ago on. And if Rutgers doesn't have a defensive line who can stop the run game, guess what? It doesn't matter who you got back there at corner and safety, because they'll never throw the ball.
Yeah, and I'm going to tell Coach Schiano, here's my advice. Look, when you go out for the team dinners, all right, forget the double cheeseburger. Get the triple cheeseburger, all right? Add some weight on these people and develop their cardiovascular skills. We want big and we want fast. You cannot win unless you have both.
I agree. And that's the thing, too. With Rutgers D-line, at times they showed really bright spots. In the bowl game against Kansas State, they showed real promise coming into this year and beyond. Like, it seemed seemed like they were getting there, but also at times they were like, "Oh, what was that?" Like,
Yeah.
sorry to bring it up, guys, but that Wisconsin game, oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
All right, that one was gross, but it wasn't a heartbreak. I thought you were going with the I word university.
No, Adam. I was talking about what Wisconsin did best was they ran the ball against you. We don't have to mention Illinois. I like
Hey,
coming on here.
We can mention Illinois because you know what? My blood pressure, which I took a long time to get back to normal, spiked uncontrollably after that fourth down pass. But look, the defensive line is an issue for two reasons: size and depth. Now, if you look at Ohio State, if you look at Penn State, they fear those defensive ends. They are fierce and they are relentless. Nobody fears the Rutgers defensive line. What I want to see is people not just who are big, but who are fast and who are hungry and who disrupt the quarterback's timing. That's the key. And Rutgers didn't do that enough, especially in the second half against Kansas State.
I will say, though, I think that people will fear Eric O'Neill by the time the year is over. Do I think he's going to be on the conversation of Carter or Graham? Absolutely not. But people are going to fear him in the same way they fear a B-tier defensive end in the NFL.
And, to add off that, what can help us solve a lot of Rutgers' issues with the D-line is get the takeaways. Because, Adam, you're going to like this what I'm about ready to bring up. USC, right? A lot of people accused them of being soft a couple years ago with Caleb Williams, having no defense, having no this, no that. But their defense always got the key takeaways. And I feel like with Rutgers, they could learn a little something. Hey, we're not the best on defense. We've got a lot to learn. We've got some really good skilled players back here, but let's get the key takeaways. And if Rutgers does that, that can mask a lot of problems.
You mentioned takeaways. Eric O'Neill, he had a thick 6 actually, and Bradley Weaver 3 forced fumbles and 8.5 sacks. So, interceptions aren't the only way to turn the ball over. Granted, O'Neill did have what is probably a flop interception. And Cam Miller will get some interceptions and a lot of pass deflections, but definitely some interceptions. But we're going to be able to get some turnovers because we're going to have loose ball opportunities. We just have to have the IQ to look around when you see the quarterback down instead of assuming the play is over and dive on that ball.
And like you said, Cam Miller, as you said, he's going to be on his own island. The quarterbacks they're not going to throw his way. A lot of times I expect, them to go to the other side of the field, like you all have been saying. And that's where I really want to see Rutgers grow because I would take that personally if I was Coach Gianna Lake. If they attack the other side of the field, I want them to make a statement. Hey, we're not scared of you. Oh, you think it's just him over here? We've got them everywhere. We're like ninjas. We're everywhere.
Bo Masco, you're going to have a lot of balls thrown your way. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah, and it doesn't matter how good our secondary is with Cam Miller and Jet Elad from UNLV. If the defensive line cannot get pressure on the quarterback and disrupt the timing, the secondary will be left out to dry, and we will give up too many points. And we also, on the offensive side, have to focus on time of possession. That's why that running back room is so critical, because if we're having 10, 11, 12 play sustained drives, not only are we keeping it away from the other offense, but we're wearing down their defense so that in the fourth quarter, we can come out on top because we hit pressure and they're worn down.
And that's a great point, Adam. And that's a great point. Because if you give a quarterback 10 seconds, 10 seconds, the great ones will eat you alive. Your D line, if they don't get home, the quarterback's just going to sit back there. Like I said last week, they're just going to sit back there, call their girlfriend, order a pizza, talk to the head coach, like, hey, how you doing? Oh, now I'm going to throw it. Okay. And it's like, what do we do?
Like Jalen Milroe against Auburn in 2023 when Auburn rushed 2 on 4th and 31. and Milroe had a few days to throw, and he finally found Isaiah Bond in the end zone. We're going to have to be able to, not only do we have to get pressure on the quarterback, but we got to get pressure with 4 so that we can have 7, and that's going to be the challenge for Rutgers.
Definitely.
And that's like you said, Adam, because the great teams could get home without blitzing. And I feel like if Rutgers could scheme it up right and do that, they could be a very dangerous team, because that is a whole nother game plan that a coach and a quarterback has to make. Because if they constantly see, oh, you blitz 50% of the time, guess what? We're going to study this, study that. But if you could get home with your front 4, that throws everything in disarray, because you don't know when they're actually blitzing and when they're not. Coach Steve Spagnuolo from the Kansas City Chiefs, he does that wonderfully. He could get home with his front 4, but he likes to blitz, but you never know when he's blitzing because his front 4 is so dominant and can get home.
I think with our linebackers, they need to focus, especially our outside linebackers, focus on attacking the running backs instead of the quarterbacks, because I'm looking at this defensive depth chart, and we have dynamic players across the defensive line for next season, and we have Kaj Sanders and Jacoby Henderson and Cam Miller as key guys in the secondary, but it's the linebackers that are kind of the biggest question mark of the whole defense. And if we send them to blitz every time, good quarterbacks in the Big Ten are going to find the open guy 5 yards downfield 9.9 out of 10 times.
Yeah, and I want to see. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just agreeing with Gabe. Go ahead, Adam. My apologies.
No, not at all. I want to see the interior defensive linemen get pushed in the middle. They really need to, and we've got to be able to say, look, 2.5 seconds. If we can forget about sacking the quarterback, disrupt his timing so that he has to get the ball out earlier. That's going to take the pressure off the defensive backs and allow us to play zone effectively. And in some cases, man, it's going to be interesting to see in 2025 how that defensive line performs.
And stylistically, I want to get your all's take on this. Stylistically, how is Rutgers defense set up to handle the running quarterback? Because that's a whole nother animal. Like, stylistically, how are y'all set up to not stop it, but maybe discourage it?
Yeah, so it really comes down to the beef in the middle, right? Especially when you got transfers coming in that weren't there last year, that these quarterbacks are going to have to adjust to, and they're gonna run when they make a break for it and they escape the pocket. They're going left or right. They can't really run up the middle. We have 4 Vince Wilforks in the middle. It's going to come down to, can you get past these linebackers, these outside linebackers, and that's, like I said, they're the biggest question mark. I wouldn't consider them a weakness just yet because we haven't seen a lot of them play. We haven't seen much of this defense play at all. We have 2 guys returning that were starters, but that's where you have the question mark. So, I guess I'm kind of answering your question with a question here, because I'll have a better answer for you come spring practice.
No, that's understandable.
What I would say to that
is a running back, basically.
When you're going against a dual threat quarterback, you have to hold the edge. You absolutely cannot let that quarterback get outside. One of the reasons Michigan was so effective against Milroe in the Rose Bowl, and then this year in the Relay Quest Bowl, is Milroe couldn't run horizontally. He couldn't get around. Okay, and then the Michigan defense on the inside was getting penetration, and they were disciplined. So that means Rutgers needs a couple of really good defensive ends, and let's hope they have them.
And that's where, and that's, Adam, a great point. I've seen a lot of great defensive coaches make a circle when they rush a running quarterback, like a circle, like the edges are contained, but they also don't give you the middle of the field either. They make you throw the ball, because that's one of the things too. When you have a running quarterback, you have to say to them, okay, we're not scared of your throwing ability. We want you to throw it. What we are scared of is you running that ball. And with Rutgers, the way y'all talk about Cam Miller and Bo, I kind of feel like y'all have some confidence, and which is a good thing. I like it. I like that you have confidence because it makes me think, okay, Rutgers is gonna be all right.
So when it
Right,
comes
and
to the secondary, I
hmm
have confidence. I have the utmost confidence in Cam Miller, and I have confidence in Jacoby Henderson and Kaj Sanders. Bo, on the other hand, that's where the ball is going to be thrown a lot. So he needs to at least be a 50-50 guy for this defense to be effective.
Yeah, and I think what needs to happen is, like you said, controlling the edges. And what I want to see is linebackers on delayed blitzes. Okay, that's going to confuse the quarterback. And if the quarterback knows they can't get the edge, and they got linebackers running right at him, like Michael Bennett did against Jalen Miller last year. They didn't blitz right away. They waited a few seconds. Miller didn't have the edge. They were getting penetration, and the linebackers come out of nowhere. That's how you stop a dual threat quarterback. So the key, Austin, is this: do we have the talent to do that? Let's hope so.
And another thing too that's kind of going to be a thing going forward is how is Rutgers, the penalties, because we're getting in this age in league going forward where it favors the wide receivers more, where like there's a lot of hand fighting, right? And sometimes they'll let it go, but a lot of times they catch the DBs and safeties at corners. Do you feel Rutgers can hold up and not get frustrated? How's their mentality with that? Especially when you play Jeremiah Smith. He's a guy that he's going to be physical with you. We know this. Like, if there's a couple flags thrown, how is Rutgers mental? Are they going to be like, oh, man, I can't. Like, what am I supposed to do? Are they going to, or is that mental toughness going to be there when they play these receivers who may get more favorable calls?
Well, with Jeremiah Smith, it's going to be pretty tough because he loves to draw contact and sort of flail his arms when he doesn't catch the ball. Granted, he's catching the ball 80% of the time. But I believe that Cam Miller, he's going to be the number one matchup against guys like him. He has great discipline. He doesn't foul a whole lot. He doesn't catch the ball a whole lot, but that's because he doesn't want to disturb the wide receiver's route. He wants to kind of work around the wide receiver and then cut off the path once it's safe to do so without drawing the penalty. Kaj Sanders and Jacoby Henderson, they're solid. Jacoby Henderson, he's definitely a smart player. Will he get some stupid penalties? Probably. Kaj Sanders sort of has his back on that as the strong safety. Whenever he does allow the open man, Kaj is very smart. He'll catch on and he'll see the open man downfield. But with penalties, we're definitely going to draw a couple, probably more from Elad and Bo, because they're going to get the ball thrown to them a lot more.
Yeah, I think with the wideouts that we're going to face, like a Jeremiah Smith, I think number one, you have to realize you're going to give up yards. So in the red zone, that's when you're going to have to hold them to 3 points more often than not. And the second thing goes back to what you said about that mental toughness. Championship teams are not just talent, they're mental toughness. They know how to overcome adversity, come back when they're down, and not get frustrated and stay disciplined. That's going to be – those intangibles are going to be the key for Rutgers because they do not have the talent, okay, they're going to struggle talent-wise with the disparity with these teams. So those intangibles can make up for that. And if they do the little things correctly, like control time and possession, don't break in the red zone, that's going to be the things that all need to come together for them to be successful.
And it's one of them things too, Adam, glad you mentioned that. Red zone defense. This absolutely drives me nuts. But I see coaches all the time just go for it. And then wonder why the defense, people want to know why the defense's percentage of red zone stoppages are up. Well, in a lot of situations, when a team is up 3, they'll be like, okay, let's go for it. And it's like, kick the 3. Like, I understand, especially when it's in a high-scoring game, I understand that. And that's what concerns me, especially with Rutgers, because they've been known at times to in the red zone to do some stupid things. No offense, guys.
Yeah,
But
true.
You can thank Dan Campbell for that. It translates down from the top, from the professionals, and these guys are just doing what they're learning in the NFL.
Mhm.
Yeah, and you
And
have young people. You have people who are 18, 19 years old, and the hardest thing as a coach to teach them is
and
the
that
emotional resilience that they need to have to win those 4 or 5 plays. And I didn't see it this year from Rutgers, and Illinois is a perfect example. So that has to improve. It's not just the talent and the skill, it's the things you can't teach, the mindset, the mental toughness that needs to prevail this year.
And another thing too is the play calling. Rutgers, I love you to death. I'm going to root for you for Gabe and Adam's sake. That way they're happy more weeks than not. But dadgummit, why can't you dial up a play other than try to run it with Monunga up the middle? Come on. Like, that's what's irritating.
We're going to have to this year.
That's what concerns me. It's like, what if that running back dive isn't working? Can your offensive coordinator with this talent and presumably going to be there for the next couple years, can he dial up plays where let's see some play action?
Bingo.
Yeah.
Bingo.
We're going to be doing a little more halfback stretches and running back pitches this year with CJ because he's more of a hybrid style running back. So we're going to have a whole new offensive scheme when it comes to the run. I mean, if he gets injured and Raymond is the starter, then maybe we might revert back to some old practices, which might not be healthy for us, but hopefully it is sustainable at the very least.
And I didn't want the defense to feel like the offense to feel like they were getting left out of this conversation because Rutgers offense in the red zone didn't do that hot either because, like Adam has mentioned, their mental toughness, 1 yard, and they were like, run it 4 times, and it's like, okay, first 2 times I understand didn't work, but come on, dial something else up, the play action, and that's what I look forward to seeing in 2025, 2026. With the new players, the new scheme, how can we dial it up? How can we utilize these players' abilities to the best of their ability and not put them in bad situations? Rutgers, and I've noticed Ethan in 3rd and longs. Oh my goodness. He's horrendous. Love you, Ethan. If you come on the show, I'm glad. But my goodness, man, know when the journey's over. He just doesn't know sometimes.
No.
That's exactly right. And I'll tell you, when you talked about predictability in their running game, I mean, everybody in the world knew what they were going to do on 1st and 10 or 2nd and 7. But it brings me back to the Nebraska game. 1st and goal at the 3 and 4 tries, they cannot punch it in. That's the difference. And that is why if Rutgers wants to be a playoff team, they have to win those battles, and mental toughness is what wins it.
And if Rutgers is going to build a playoff team like you guys are mentioning and what you are hoping for in 2026, Adam, mental toughness is where it starts. You get shut down on the first play, let's go to the next one. It just seems like Rutgers shut down sometimes, and it's like, guys, this is not how we win football games. We get up off the ground, pick ourselves up, put our big boy britches on, and do something else. Instead of just, it's not our night. Oh, well. Back home I go.
Well, you saw that on full display in that 42-10 loss against Wisconsin, and then you saw it against Washington when they won 21-18. And what the coach has to be telling them is it's not good enough to be mentally tough for one game. You got to be mentally tough every game. And that's the consistency that Rutgers lacked this year, and they're going to need in the upcoming year.
And last thing I'll mention is this for I go, is Rutgers going forward. Obviously for this year and going forward, the coaching staff, obviously how are they going to put these players in better positions? Because we talk about the players, all the time, have to sometimes do it themselves. But the coaches play a big part on the players' success going forward. How do you see that going forward, guys? How can they put this team success ahead, just beyond this year?
You're saying the coach's success?
No, how can the coaches help the players' success? Clarify a little bit better. There you go.
Well, we talked about this a few weeks ago. It's about building a culture that's sustainable, and to do so, we need first Greg Schiano not to be on the hot seat. Because if a coach is on the hot seat, their heart's not going to be in it unless they're winning every game. Their heart's not going to be in it. They're going to be looking at other schools. They're going to be looking at the NFL. They're going to be looking at some high schools. They're going to be looking at demotions at other schools. So that's the first step. Is we need Schiano to have his job secured, and the only way to do that is to start off hot. Now, I think we can start off hot because our two toughest opponents are the last 2 weeks, and I had us going 9-3. So we should start off hot in theory. So it really comes down to job security first, and then that translates down to the players. Hey, you're allowed to mess up once or twice. We're going to teach you how to avoid those mishaps in the future, but you're not going to lose your job because of one or two mistakes. And particularly with Ethan, he's not going to lose his job this year, no matter how bad he performs. So he's safe, and coaches need to reassure him that it's okay to be patient in the pocket. It's okay to be down 20 and still think that you can win this game.
Yeah, and I think the coaches have to do two things. Number one, like Gabe said, the culture. They have to create a culture where these players are holding themselves to high standards, being held accountable, and being pushed to be their best. And number two, the expectations. The expectations are to win a national championship. We want players who have those intangibles and that mental toughness inherently. So it really comes down to a combination of the coaches building the environment in which they can succeed, and having the players that can execute that. And I think that right now Rutgers isn't there. Whether they can get there is going to depend on whether they can do the little things on a consistent basis and sustain their success and win those 4 or 5 plays every game.
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing, too. The last point I'll make on that is with a lot of players, they're still young, they're still learning. But as we know, the transfer portal, NIL, it's a big thing. It's a whole nother animal, and I'm sure that would be another 5-hour conversation if we got into that can of worms. But for me, the coaching staff needs to ensure these players, the ones that are going to instill in them, hey, if you stay here at Rutgers, we're going to have your back. Like you said, Gabe, and like you said, Adam, both make great points, and they kind of come into one. The one I'm about ready to make is still the belief, but also coach them hard and love them harder. Like, hey, you made a mistake, shake it off. Hey, you made a great play. You can't get lackadaisical. You can't get comfortable. You have to have that edge. You have to have that kill or be killed mentality sometimes. I know it's rough to say, but sometimes, as we know in this business of college football, it is that way.
Yes, that's what makes you successful in college football and in life. You're 100% right.
Mm-hmm.
It's football.
But
You have to be tough to play.
Oh, go ahead, Gabe. My bad.
I was just saying, it's football. You have to be tough to play.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
You got to want to win.
And thank you guys for letting me on as always. I enjoy talking Rutgers football with you. You two are excellent gentlemen, and I look forward to having another conversation with y'all again about Rutgers.
Thanks so much, Austin. We appreciate you coming on the show. Great comments, and we hope to see you again. Thanks so much.
Same time next week.
All right, guys, that is Austin calling in with outstanding comments, as always, and insightful comments about Rutgers football. We appreciate Austin coming on, and we appreciate you for watching. If you like the show, please hit that like and subscribe button. Well, Gabe, looks like we've got another great show and some great ones coming up next week.
Yeah, absolutely. And talking about NIL there at the end, maybe that can of worms could be open next week. It's definitely a possibility.
I think that might be something we want to definitely explore next week. Well, to everyone watching, this wraps up our show for this week at Rutgers at the Voice of College Football. We thank you so much for being here. Every Monday night, 7 p.m., we're going to be here talking about Rutgers, recruiting, the future, the players, the expectations, and what we can expect in the coming season. So please join us. We always look forward to your comments and your calls. Hope you enjoyed the show. We'll see you next week at 7 o'clock on Monday.
Same time next week. See you guys then.